Hey, it's the Profit Answer Man, Rocky Lalvani. If you're new to the podcast, check out my interview with Mike Michalowicz. It's episode number 2. If you want to hear about each chapter in the Profit First book, go back and listen to episodes 3 through 13. Episode 1 is the why and how. On the Profit Answer Man, we learn money mastery without all the complicated accounting mumbo-jumbo using a simple system. Your accountant is busy documenting your transactions and creating a rearview mirror of what happened. My guess is you don't even look at the reports they sent you. If you're like most business owners, you struggle with this, and it's not your fault. We aren't taught money in school, and accountants aren't taught how to be profitable. The Profit First system created by Mike Michalowicz works, and he certified me to help you implement the system in your business. Remember, the new equation is sales minus profit equals expenses. Let's face it, without cash flow, you can't pay your employees, buy needed materials, or pay your mortgage and support your family. I help you to do that and more, so you can focus on the parts of the business you love and receive the rewards for your labor and investment into your business. The stronger you are as a business owner, the more jobs you create, the better we are as a country. Small business owners are the backbone of America, and for that, you deserve to be well rewarded. Just remember, more revenue does not equal more profit. That's why we focus on the bottom line. This episode of the Profit Answer Man podcast is brought to you by SMBpodcastnetwork.com. The network is a collection of podcasts and shows from around the internet which focus on bringing you interviews with amazing guests who share actionable advice, ideas, and information for small and medium-sized business owners and entrepreneurs. Visit www.smbpodcastnetwork.com to find more great shows and easily subscribe to be notified of new episodes. It's a great way to discover quality content. If you've discovered us via the network, then I hope you enjoy today's show and will consider subscribing directly so you never miss our episodes. Big news. We realize that we are not able to help every business and that many smaller ones can't justify our fees. And quite frankly, they're right. But they still need help. And that's why we are creating the Profit First Experience, a course that includes different levels of support and an upcoming community to focus on helping you to be more profitable. If you're interested in learning more, please use the link in the show notes to sign up to be notified when it launches and to secure the pre-launch special pricing. How intentional are you in your business? Do you take the small steps to build your foundation and then measure and check how it's going? That's our topic today. The basic, simple steps that will allow you to scale and grow to whatever level you choose. AJ Lawrence is a serial entrepreneur with multiple exits, an angel investor, a growth expert, and host of the Beyond 8 Figures podcast, where I was a guest. With over 25 years of exceptional experience in industries ranging from consumer goods to SaaS, he uses data-driven insights to drive lasting and sustainable growth. AJ calls himself a journeyman entrepreneur because he finds great joy in learning from people who have achieved more than he did and finding ways to use their insights. He's always on the lookout for opportunities to connect and collaborate with interesting people and support the community. Let's meet AJ. Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, AJ Lawrence. It's great to have you join us today.
Hey, Rocky. It's great to talk with you again. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
You are most welcome. Can you share a little bit about yourself and your business?
Sure. So I'm the host of the Beyond 8 Figures podcast. I think we talk to the same people as you do, or we interview the same people. I'm fascinated as a repeat entrepreneur who has sold a few companies. I'm fascinated about the journey of being an entrepreneur, the things we do, how we change over time and experience our abilities as an entrepreneur. And so I'm just fascinated to talk with other entrepreneurs and find out what they've done that helped them become better in their journeys.
I have found we can either learn from our mistakes or someone else's, and learning from other people's mistakes is much, much cheaper.
It is, but I find it a lot of times it's a hybrid. For me, what I find is I get not so much when I'm trying to do something. I find a lot of times I get frustrated because I don't know the answer, and my magical Google skills don't provide the nice, easy answer for me of how to do it. But when I hear someone else who probably is doing something completely different, but has still approached this type of situation, all of a sudden it resonates. And I may not even do what they did, but just by listening to how they approached it, how they thought about it, and sometimes just knowing someone has done it has helped. Just like, oh, wait, other people have climbed this tree. I can climb this tree. So, I find it, that mix, like, I make mistakes 24/7, but when I hear about other people's efforts, either on or things they've worked on to grow from their mistakes, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this may help. Maybe I can do this. I actually just used you as an example since you were on my show a little over 4 months ago, give or take. I've built from scratch and sold 2 digital agencies and a software company. I've done well, but no home runs. Sorry, a small thing. Low to mid 7 figures, not the big home runs that everyone always hopes for. But I've been really fascinated with acquisition entrepreneurship, and there's a lot of information out there about the approach of like buying a company and then what do, going through the SBA or going through investors and different types of lenders and all this stuff, and there's different terminology, all this. But I got fascinated by this one business, and I actually was planning more to wait. I'm in the middle of moving from Spain to the US, back to the US. I'm American, but I didn't have my act together. As someone who preaches deliberate practice, that kind of, summarizes this great opportunity, or at least what I thought was a great opportunity, came through, really did some great research into it, really felt that there was a lot of opportunity, some great conversations with the seller, but, it's an open bid. So I'm competing with other sellers. And in the end, I didn't have my financial structure in place. Because I am what I call, I do various consulting, I have ownership stakes in a lot of different things. I really don't keep my books. And I know this is sort of, really bad from a profit, from profitability, but I only really keep my books for taxes, and I only update them once a year. This is not smart. I get it. And I'm now working to be more. Well, because I didn't have everything, the seller really liked my offer, really liked our connection, but the little bit of doubt not having my financial lending, in place, my finances already agreed, all stuff I've had verbal commitment on, but not stuff I had done the paperwork to have the written space. Just a little that, hey, take me a month, I'll be done. I thought I could just wing it. And lo and behold, he took the safer deal, and cash up front is pretty hard to beat, even if it's a lower price, versus waiting a month to maybe I don't. So because I didn't have my books in order, because I wasn't being deliberate about my efforts, I probably would have still lost this deal, but I would have made it that much harder. I would have probably been like 5% closer to winning it if I had done my finance, gotten everything up to date and done everything that I was supposed to, and been very nice and, dotted my I's and crossed my T's. This is kind of what fascinates me, as I move again from being crazy experiments and building things and investing in cool companies to now looking to build a new company, acquire a new company, is it a lot of times, sort of, if you like football, it's a game of inches. It's not about, the cool, brilliant idea that starstrucks everyone. It's not this. It's like, you can make money, but lose it hand over fist if you're not careful, which I think I've heard this podcast that I listen to that he talks about that. You may know him. Rocky's a great guy.
The funny thing is, and I think this is kind of a realization I've had more and more, there are two skills in business. One is the skill is to generate revenue. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I think most entrepreneurs are pretty good at generating revenue. Like, hey, we can crank out 7 figures of revenue. No problem. Where they really struggle, and this is a totally separate skill, and this is where my wheelhouse is, how do we keep it? Because just as fast as you can generate it, you can spend it. But the real key is, can we keep it? Because when we can keep it, the opportunity that was presented to you is on sale for me because I got cash and I can stroke a check, or I have access to cash. Both are fine.
Yeah.
The point is we can move quickly, but in order to do that, you need to have your foundation strong. And it's really easy to build a beautiful house. What's really hard is to struggle to build the foundation. And in the business, your foundation is your mission, your values, your purpose, your org chart, your systems, and your processes and your bookkeeping. That's all like boring crap. But without that foundation, all the stuff on top looks beautiful, but it doesn't hold.
No, and this is, why I became fascinated in interviewing entrepreneurs who have gone beyond 8 figures, but the number doesn't really matter, but people who've built big businesses, it is that transition from, I can make money, because that's hard enough. And believe me, I got lucky early on in the first business. Well, I got hard, lucky, then hard for another 10 years, and then lucky and lucky. But it's this idea that somehow you become that person who can generate the revenue. But then, somewhere, mid 7s, 3 to like 6, things get really, really choppy. You don't have as much existential threat of like, are we even going to have a business? Can I even make payroll? But your free cash flow is nowhere near all of your overhead needs, depending on your business model, obviously. And this is why I get fascinated by, talking to people like you and other entrepreneurs who have worked, either worked with people to do this or have gone beyond, because you start seeing, these guys who are that, I'm going to make something happen, all of a sudden find a way, maybe not to get rid of it, but to find either partners or find something in themselves to begin that process of systematizing, developing the structure, and incremental directional progress. It's that really fascinating thing where you only, yes, some people do find magic beans that take them way past and never worry about it. But 99.9% of us have to transition. And that's what I'm fascinated on, because I haven't been able to figure that on my own. So learning from people like you is part of why I incorporate it into my trying to be more deliberate in my entrepreneurism.
It's funny you say that. You talk about the magic beans. So let's look at some magic beans. You look at Amazon, you look at Uber. It took years for Amazon to become profitable.
And they were systems and systems and systems from early.
Amazon was always systematized. Uber, they're still not making money, right? They're still struggling, trying to figure out profitability. Tesla wasn't profitable until I think last year for the first time. And most of us don't have that kind of cash that can take us through that chasm. Some people are lucky. They've got a great story. Here's the magic bean, but the majority of us would never survive that. And you've got to systematize your business. And the second thing is the owner's got to get out of the way. The owner is the number one obstacle to growth. And too often they can't let go.
I mean, I have to say I got lucky in my first company. I sold to a company purely for stock that went bankrupt. So I didn't get lucky in that part, but I got lucky that I sold right about the time we had any real difficulty in the company. Second company, we literally failed, but one of our vendors loved our software so much that they just paid us a boatload of money. And then we found out 20x that to some big enterprise company. But my last company, it really was this case where it was like, oh, I had so thought I was the man. I was the person who made everything happen. But by the time we got bigger and we were really doing our best work, not at our height, because I did think I took on revenue near the end just for the sale. But like there was a point where I realized I'm actually making things worse. I'm not the reason anymore. I'm not the magic. I'm not the, I'm no longer the headliner. I'm actually probably in all likelihood, if I'm truthful, I'm probably the roadie, in the show, because I had hired such great people, but my ego was so, I'm the man, and that's, like you said, that is so difficult to kind of work with and kind of transition and go, breathe in, breathe out. What's more important? Me being able to see myself on a newspaper or see myself on a LinkedIn post or get a viral tweet, or building a team that can develop directionally correct revenue growth on a consistent basis. And it's like, I'll take any of those days. It's just in the moment trying to balance that appropriately.
I think for a lot of business owners, where they're really stuck at is there's so much in the weeds and so much is on fire. They don't take the time to deliberately focus on the foundation and growing the business. So what are the levers that we should focus on to appropriately grow our business?
Well, it's funny. In getting to interview a lot of these, I read a lot of time and you hear all these things, EOS and ROC and planning and 90-day cycles and all this. What I've realized is there's no right or wrong answer. You just need to do it. And I'll actually make a reference because we are using his product. I just had the CEO of Fireflies.ai, since it's taking notes on this conversation right now, on the show. Chris Kumanari, please, I hope I got those last two correct. Really interesting way. He talks about his planning and his sort of review cycles as being whatever the 10 next steps he and the company need to take to go after their big picture. And he's very clear. It's like his 10 things could be stuff he has to do today, next month, next quarter, 4 or even 10 years from now. And then he's constantly playing what resources does he need to take those steps. And he says every day he reevaluates where he is. And I liked it. I mean, and there's different ways. I really do like the ROC planning. Is it with EOS and different things? I do like the 90-day year. There are different ways of planning, but I like that because it was kind of combining short and long term all into one sort of process and keeping it very active and engaged. And at the end of the day, all that really matters is if you are doing that feedback cycle. Yes, there may be things you find are better for you or less, but for me, it's like find the feedback cycle of how often how often you need to be going over your long and your short term planning and where you are with your data, your analytics and your structure, and make it work. I had the CEO of Trends.vc, which is online community about breaking trends and sort of how to utilize them, growing like crazy. And they're moving more into like masterminding on different teams. So they now have thousands and thousands of people into their mastermind. He spends 90 minutes at the end of every day going over. He has it broken down from statistical analysis all the way to his long-term goal alignment on his efforts for the day. And I'm like, oh my God bless you. I can never even get 90 minutes of my day to think. So that's amazing that you do that. But that works for him. For someone else, it doesn't. And it's just find the systems, test them out, figure out what's going to work for you, and stick with it. I always tell the story, like I worked with a great coach, Jerry Colonna, who does Reboot now. And Jerry was always on my case to kind of, create more of an ongoing, feedback loop for my efforts in our coaching. So I eventually came up with sort of what I called, my weekly report card, my reds, my greens, and my yellows. And in the few years I worked with him doing that and consistently doing it, I had the best growth of, my entrepreneurial journey. It sucked and it week to week felt like it was crappy. But when I looked over the course of the year, we blew through every goal. It was only after I stopped working with Jerry and things got really crazy and we grew really quickly, I stopped doing it because I was too busy. Lo and behold, 6 months later, we had a big crash and it took me 2 years to recover. So, correlation, probably. It has to come to the system that works for you. But do it is kind of what I'm realizing.
One of the richest men in the world is Warren Buffett. And I don't know what his daily routine looks like, but I can assure you he's not running around and putting his finger in all those companies he owns. He spends most of his time thinking.
He reads. I'm in the middle of the move, so I probably don't have it. All right, it's already been put in, but I have I have his partner, the COO, is a really great thing. It's a collection of his writings from, Poor Charlie's. And it goes into sort of some of their days in it. And it like literally is the two of them just like having stacks of magazines or reports, financial, and they're just reading. Like they just sit there and they like each other's companies so much because they don't bother each other while they read. and it goes more, but that is a great structure.
It's all about thinking time. It's about creating the space to focus on your business. And I think that, as I've built this business, you think you know what you're selling. And then you come to realize, wait a minute, that's not really what I do. What I really do is create the space for people to spend time looking at their business, reviewing, did it go well? Did it go bad? And then the most important thing is, what's the next step? And sometimes we have the right steps. Sometimes we have the wrong steps, but you're constantly focusing and paying attention. And that's the biggest thing that scares me is when businesses explode, take off. They're like, oh, I don't have time to do this anymore. And I'm like, whoa, this is the most important time because this is where everything goes off the tracks. If you don't maintain that, everything goes crazy. And I don't think people realize how important it is to just stop, breathe, think. And it doesn't even need to be hours. Even if you did it 10 minutes a day, it would be dramatically shifting your business.
It really, that planning you're talking about, the littlest things happen. You become more familiar with the rough patches. And you and I were just kind of joking about, before we started this, just about the US economy and then comparing it to European. And, it's like at times it's not that everything in your business is bad. It usually, at least in my case, there were a couple of things. And when I had been more focused or had been more present, and I'll kind of balance it there. And I had earlier in our growth, I like to say it was like, I probably was going into I was going up into the upper seven figures with a low seven-figure infrastructure. So, when I was in the low seven figures, things were working and I understood and I knew where the problems were. So if we kind of touched them and things kind of like in your car, I could go, okay, I just have to step off the gas a bit. Or, all right, turn on, hit the flip, hit the lights and then do this twice and then it just disappears. We don't know why, but it just disappears. When I increased the speed and I didn't have that touch for the feel, little things kept adding up. And then all of a sudden, when something bad happened, but not horrible, things I had recovered many times earlier, much worse, I had too much deficit in awareness, too much deficit in morale, all different parts of the company, because I had taken I'd so focused on growth and I wasn't even focusing on growth for, hypergrowth has some beautiful uses if you pay attention to it. But that's our dream to a lot of time. I wasn't. So when things started coughing, I really just had the whole system seize up on me. And that's, why I interview these people on Beyond Eight Figures is we get to hear how other people either approached and dealt with it or recovered or just were smart enough ahead of time to, I'm always most frustrated by those people. We were like, you planned from the beginning for that? Dang, that's smart.
You do. You have to, because think about something. When you're a small business, right? If I'm a $100,000 business and I grow 10x, a problem that's small at 100,000, you 10x your problem. And then if you go to 10 million, now you 100x your problem. And so if you don't fix the little cracks in the beginning, then they turn into massive cracks at the end. And then they're unfixable.
Yeah. And I think even sometimes your problems will grow faster than your revenue because the reality is you're chasing after your revenue sometimes, depending on your business model and thing. But in my experience, so chasing after it, that I let my margin slip so I could service. I brought in more people faster, overpaid because we needed better people, all sorts of things, better more expensive systems, software, etc. both out. And what happens is you still have that your star salesperson is really only a star of sales if they are dealing with this level of client. You've just built your company up to now the next level or 2-level higher client. They don't know how to communicate with them, and you don't have anyone else who can, or what? You've just raised their availability, their value by so much that someone's going to come and pay them 3 times what has happened to me. Someone offered my star salesperson 3 times. And it was like, good luck. I did it yet. Dang. And I wasn't ready. And it had a huge impact.
That was the biggest lesson I learned from Mark Moses was when he takes companies from 7 to 8 and all the way through the 8-figure numbers, he showed the picture of their teams and he goes, there's one thing you'll notice. The people on the teams keep changing because the guy who gets you to 7 figures is not the guy who's going to get you to 8 figures, is not the guy who's going to get you to 50 million. If you're not constantly upgrading your team, your people, your systems, if you're holding on to the past, what got you here won't get you there. they can't get to the next level. And even if you look at large companies, as they grow through different phases, they bring in different people. There's the growth guy, the person who takes it from that level to the next level. And so you do have to constantly be changing and upgrading your systems and your processes and your people. And you are going to deal with those things. If you've got great people, let's face it, people are going to steal them. And if you've got great margins, you're going to attract competition. That's just life.
Just life. Or you'll play, if you're not careful, you'll play with your margins saying, oh, I'm safe. I have all this great money. I might as well X, Y, and Z. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, a couple of percentage points there, a couple of percentage points there. I mean, one of the things that I found really fascinating listening to your podcast, because it so fits with what I'm learning. I think we listen to a lot of these things and people say, you need to do X. Expert Y or a successful entrepreneur says, you need to do X. And a lot of us kind of are in the moment trying to do 50 million things. And we're in that transition point from like force of will type of company, trench warfare, however you want to describe it, into, a business that needs to be grown and tended to and systematized. And we don't know where to start. We don't understand the vocabulary, whatever it may be. And we think it has to happen 1, 2, 3, and yet we're so busy. You talk a lot of times about it's not about getting profit tomorrow. It's about starting with step 1, getting incremental, getting your understanding, getting the pieces together, taking care of the low-hanging fruit, moving forward. And it's the same thing that I'm finding that the really successful entrepreneurs, they set out early on these things where they're like, I don't know. But as long as I do a little bit of incremental, a little bit more directionally correct, I keep wanting to do that stupid 70s, and soon you'll be walking out the door. But Mr. Freezeman or, whatever from Frosted Snowman. But back to the point, it is that incremental, directionally correct progress. If you just look at that versus having the answers all at once, you do see people like, I love Kara Goldin from Hint. And I actually went back after my interview with her because she talked about, like, early on, she was just really trying to convince herself that she could do these things, that there was value, that would make her healthy, because she had gained weight, she wasn't healthy and all this stuff. And then she kind of talked about just convincing a few people, like her mission. This, Hint is known as this big mission-driven soft drink, or not soft drink, she'd kill me, but, health drink. Healthy drink, healthy, whatever. Yes, I'm going to massacre it. But you go back and you look at her early social efforts, you look at her early copy, the things she's talking about. It is very, very basic and very much about her belief and her movement. It is over time that her ability to articulate that mission to larger and larger groups of people starts becoming stronger and more coherent and resonating in larger things. And it's so much of, I think I've talked with entrepreneurs so often that they think they need to be, on the, Dragon's Gate or whatever they have to be polished and clean and up there. And it's like, no, you need to convince yourself. Then you need to convince one other person and then another. And then, it's like, take the deep breath. And as you've said many times about profits, incremental progress.
It is. It's just begin with the end in mind and then take a step towards it. And I think I meet a lot of people who do what I do. And I've got to tell you, I think they work 5 to 10 times harder than me. And they probably make less than I do. Because they build these businesses that are just so cumbersome instead of just staying lean, mean, and knowing what you want and what you're truly happy with. And I think it comes back. It all comes down to thinking time. It literally does. The more time you can do to think about your business and work on your business instead of in your business, the better off it is. And we've had a lot of exit planners on, and that's, the big thing is get out of the business and your business becomes more valuable. And in order to do that, you kind of need to think. And that's, what is the next step? And then execute. That's the other problem. People don't execute. They don't write down, what do I need to do? Put a system and process in to do it and execute. Like for me, I manage my calendar. If you told me to do something right now, what I would do is go find a place on my calendar and put a task on it. And then I would go back to doing what I was doing so I'm not disrupted. And when the time comes, I'm like, oh, here are my tasks. And this is what I do. And so if I can do that with entrepreneurs, is to get them to have one day out of the office where you have all your tasks lined up, then you come in and you just crank out all the things you need to work on and you get it done instead of running on the hamster wheel all day.
Yeah, and I'm going to pull a blank. Strategic coach. Dan Sullivan. Really interesting. Sometimes I think they take really big. All right, I have a horrible thing. They kind of take basic systems a lot of times and then give it their own name and change it up a bit. So I kind of grind a little bit on them. But the incredible thing I love about that is the Entrepreneur Times, where they really are pushing. It's like you have your on stage and behind stage, moments. You have your day off, your planning. You have your energy day. Yeah, that to me was one of the coolest things about his program, because he really is, and he's like, and I felt was really interesting. It's about training your team. If you have a personal assistant, a virtual assistant, whatever, they focus on training them to manage your schedule that way, and only a little bit on the entrepreneur himself on how to, it's like, you need to do this. We'll go talk to your team about making sure that you're not allowed to do these things. It was like, it's a very interesting and very impressive way of, making sure that you work on, not in, your efforts.
And that is the takeaway, and creating the limits and blocking your calendar and all of that. Like I did that all up front, and I've even tightened it up even more and more. And I'm continuing to tighten it up to limit access to my time so that I have more time to focus on what I need to and be able to do that. And it's a balance. It's not easy, but it's definitely doable.
It is. And I think this is where, I joke a lot because it is kind of the way I position myself, this weird mix of my background. I have made a lot of mistakes, but when I have done the planning or the time framing, the blocking, when you follow these things on a consistent basis, it's the very tough thing, I think, for a lot of entrepreneurs is you don't have the immediate, like, oh my God, this is that home run. But you do see your quarterly, your annual, all of a sudden things change on the big picture that, you wouldn't have been even close to, earlier. And that's something I'm really kind of starting to do a little bit more learning about and talking about on my podcast. It's like, it feels so good to swing for the fences. I mean, as an entrepreneur, we're almost I almost hear more bragging from the 1 to 5 million range entrepreneurs than I ever hear from the above 8 figures. It's like, I made something happen. I just had a guy who has like 6 foundries, and the fact that he's growing like gangbusters and like boundaries, of course, just never would have thought of it. He's brilliant and he's proud of everything, but not once. Yeah, he really was just calling out different people on his team repeatedly. There was to the point where it was like, yeah, I kind of sit there and make sure that everyone, gets to hear about my golf game. That was like, I was like, dude, you have this amazing company and you're, it's everyone else, not you're talking about. I think there's something there, to pay attention to.
That there is. And we talk about it all the time. His top line is vanity, bottom line is sanity, and cash flow is reality. And getting yourself out of your business is key. And that's what has to happen. Life is pretty simple. Doing simple is hard. And that's kind of the biggest problem, the biggest takeaway. If people would like to learn more about you, about the Beyond 8 Figures podcast, what's the best way for them to connect and find you?
Why don't you please come to beyond8figures.com and sign up for our newsletter. That way, whenever we have an amazing guest like Rocky, who's been on the show, and I hope to get him back on, you'll be the first to know. And you can always find me on Twitter at AJ Lawrence. And you're going to find either things about cocktails, my efforts to acquire a company, or just about the different guests that I have on the show. So please give me a shout. I'd love to chat with anyone who's interested.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll put that in the show notes.
Thank you, Rocky.
Business can be simple, but doing simple is hard. We all focus on what we love, and we run around, but stopping to think and working on the business is what truly drives the needle. You heard AJ's story and how not having done some of the basics prevented him from acquiring another business. Let's do the simple, let's do it consistently, and let's thrive and grow.
If you want a done-for-you service, you can hire us as your chief profitability officers. You have your own area of expertise, and maybe you want to spend more of your time doing what you love. We only work with a handful of clients, so they all get our full attention. We work with business owners who have or are growing to $500,000 to $5 million in revenue. You can use the scheduling link in the show notes to get on our calendar for a good fit conversation to see if we're the right people to support you and how we can help you.
Hey, it's Rocky. Don't forget to check out my other podcast, Richer Soul, where we talk about life beyond money and how to live that ultimate life and become a better leader in your company. As we close out, let's repeat the mantra. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. Have an abundant and profitable week.